trust and it's a revocable trust, the revocable trust now becomes irrevocable, and those assets are transferred based on what the trust document says versus what the will says.
Good day, my name is David Fusco, and in this show, I'm going to talk about business, finance, and how to survive and thrive in this crazy environment that we're living in today. Welcome to my show.
Good day. Gave myself a little bit of a time break between my last video and this one. Got jammed up with Uncle Sam's work needing to be done for clients. But over the last few weeks, and actually over the last few years, with the world the way it is, and honestly, the way the world's always been, one of the things that seems to come up, at least at some point in every single person's life, and especially every business person's life, is how do you protect what you have? When we're talking about asset protection, we're talking about the things that you own, and how do you keep them safe so that you don't lose them due to a mistake or an accident or something like that. There are different types of risks out there in the world. There's the risk for losing your assets due to, let's say, a government. You did something that they don't like, you didn't pay your taxes, whatever it might be. Obviously, they have a longer arm than most people do. Another kind of risk would be from a lawsuit where someone has a vehicle accident or something like that, and you get sued. It could be for defamation, which is somebody says, hey, you slandered them and said something not nice, and it changed the opinions of others, and now for you damaged my reputation, so now I'm going to sue you. So there are all different types of forms of liability. And what happens is, in the case of someone coming after your assets, one of the things they'll do is first things that the lawyers would do if it's a lawsuit is, what insurances do you have? So the plaintiff goes, the person with the problem goes to an attorney. They have an issue with you for whatever it might be. And so there's a reach out and then an information gathering from their point of view. So they're going to want to know what insurance carriers you have. And the funny thing is as soon as you have insurance, you're now definitely a target for a lawsuit, more so than if you had no insurance. Why? Is because they know there's a deep pocket out there to go after. So the next thing is let's say you don't have insurance. So the attorneys from the plaintiff side is going to say, okay, well, what assets do they have? So if you own buildings and you own fixed assets like that, you're not going to be able to change them and move them. It's not like you can pick up a dollar bill and put it in your pocket. Here it is. There's a deed, there's a title, everything's documented. You own brokerage accounts, you have stock certificates, you have bank accounts. All of these things make you a very attractive target for a lawsuit. There's also new rules coming out, which came out actually, affecting all small businesses. This even includes people who own a single member LLC. Let's say they own a 2-family rental house and they want to create a wall of protection, so they'll create a limited liability company, and they'll put the title of the building in that limited liability company. Now, as of next year, every single entity in the United States is going to have to file a report with another reporting agency identifying who certain owners are, people who have exercising control over an entity, and that's going to have to be provided to the government along with verification of your identity, which would include your passport or one of those real ID driver's licenses. So the locking together of all your information is becoming tighter and tighter, and things are going to become easier to find. And in the case of losing a lawsuit, easier to seize, be it from a civil lawsuit, criminal lawsuit, or a government coming after you for some reason. Different, could be federal, could be state, could be a local. When you're buying assets and when you're owning and holding assets, there's different ways, of course, to own them. You can own them as an individual. Obviously, that gives you the most risk for those assets being out there to be claimed. Another way would be to own assets as a joint owner. So where you own one asset with two people. If it's a husband and a wife, in most states, it's what's called tenants in the entirety, which is kind of a strange way to own things, but effectively both parties own 100%. So that asset's pretty strong and hard to come after for if one of the people are at risk. The problem there is that, one of the biggest risks that most people have that have a driver's license and a vehicle is a vehicle accident. What happens in a vehicle accident is the person driving obviously would be a potential person that would be at risk for the lawsuit, and the title owner of the vehicle. And it's not uncommon for, let's say, one spouse to have the title of the vehicle in their name, and then the other spouse is the driver. If that driver has an accident, things that are owned jointly are now fully at risk because both the title owner of the vehicle and also the actual driver of the vehicle are liable, and therefore jointly held assets are at risk for a claimant. Another thing that can happen with vehicles is a lot of times people, if they have children that hit driving age, they're going to hand their kids a car key of their car, and the kid's going to drive around, or they're going to buy the kid a car and they're going to put insurance in the car in the title of the parent's name. Again, you got a driver, they're at risk of the liability claim, and you also got the title owner. So the title owner of that vehicle is the parent, because you want to save a couple of dollars in insurance costs. That child has a severe car accident. Let's make it big. They jump the curb and they run over the graduating class of 12 neurosurgeons. You're wiped out. You've got high earners. They're coming in. They're coming hard. So now all your assets that are improperly titled, or that are titled in such a way that a lawsuit could penetrate them, is going to put those assets at risk. So you better judge the driving abilities of a brand new driver, putting them in a vehicle with your name on it, and then them being out there on the street. I don't know about you, but from the age of 17 to 18, just that 1 year's time frame, I probably had 4 or 5 vehicle accidents, and I don't think that's uncommon, although maybe mine was a little more than others. So I'm going to jump back a little bit now to what I talked about owning an asset, let's say a rental property in an LLC, or a limited liability company. Some people don't understand how that protects you. As long as you set it up properly, and as long as the deed's properly recorded in the name of the LLC, what'll happen is that any liability actions that might happen within the scope of that LLC or within the scope of that building is going to be at risk. So if you have the 2-family house, the ceiling collapses and causes injury or death to someone, you're going to get a lawsuit. The lawsuit will be against the LLC. They'll probably also bring an action against you as an individual. As long as you've set up the entity properly, it's going to stay against the LLC. So the only thing at risk is that one building. So it contains the risk inside of one structure. On the other side of the coin, if you have that car accident and you're the single owner of that LLC that owns that building, well, that LLC is at risk to being claimed in that lawsuit because you're the individual owner and you're the individual person who has the lawsuit against them if you lose. So you got to look at these things. One of the areas that's very common that people become very conscious of is when they have elderly parents. Usually, from what I've seen over my 40 years almost of tax and accounting prep work, is that, people hit around the 70s mark. They're noticing now their health is starting to go down. Maybe cognitive abilities are going down, and they want to protect the assets from a nursing home. And that's what's called Medicaid. So what happens is if it goes into a nursing home, all of their assets that they own are at risk. All of their income that they have coming in is at risk. And the nursing home will take you in. Medicaid pays the bill. They're going to have different spend down requirements. I don't know what they are off my head. That's outside my scope. But I plan on doing an interview with a elder law attorney. So that's the wording they use for it. But an elder law attorney doesn't just, although it uses the word elder or old person, it doesn't mean that they're really doing just elder law. What they're doing is asset protection. So they use trusts and ownership of those assets that could be put into the trust. So you could put anything pretty much into a trust. You can put buildings into a trust. You could put bank accounts into a trust. You could put brokerage accounts into a trust. You could put certain types of entities into a trust, such as, let's say you had limited gas, oil and gas, an oil and gas limited partnership. So that could go in there. So things like that. Depending on how the trust is drafted, there's different types of trusts. I know I'm getting into some crazier brain thought stuff, but that's why it's important to do your reviews and then get an understanding of the language and how it would work for you. But you have a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. And it kind of is what it sounds like. A revocable trust means that the person putting the assets into it can change their mind. An irrevocable trust means a person putting in the asset in cannot change their mind, although that's not 100% true. There are ways to still break that trust. I believe what you need to do, and I'm not the attorney, is you need to get all beneficiaries to agree to the change in the trust. So if you named minor children in there, I don't know how what kind of issue that creates, but minors are not allowed to enter into contracts. So that's, again, outside my scope. So, again, that's where the attorney needs to get involved. And every single state's different. There are other things, too, that doesn't really affect New York state people, but there's states where they have what's called common law. So two spouses marry, and in certain states, all their assets suddenly become enjoined. And, again, you need to know what your state laws are, and you need to talk to an attorney that specializes in your state. A lot of the rules are the same for many of the states. So how can a irrevocable trust help you? So let's say you put the assets into that trust and those assets generate income. Whatever claim you can have against that trust asset, principal meaning, or income, so can a creditor. So if you have a building generating income in there, let's say $100,000 a year, just to have a nice juicy number, and you get a claim against you, they can't breach the trust because you set it up correctly. But since you have the capacity to draw income, so does that claimant. So as long as you're alive, they can keep pulling that income. That would include Medicaid, nursing homes, claimants against you. But what's nice about this is that the principal's protected. So, yeah, okay, fine, they can get that $100,000 in income every year, but that principal, that building itself, they can't touch that. And that's going to go, eventually when you pass on, that's going to get transferred to your beneficiaries that you listed in the trust. Some people use revocable trusts. You lose a lot of the asset protection there, but you do gain something. The reason why people might use a revocable trust is that it eases the transfers of property when somebody dies. So if somebody dies and the assets are in the name of the trust and it's a revocable trust, the revocable trust now becomes irrevocable, and those assets are transferred based on what the trust document says versus what the will says. So the will could say it goes to my wife. The trust says it goes to my children. The trust is going to govern. There are other rules that, again, each state's different, where you're not allowed to disinherit your spouse. So you can't just move everything that way. So what's important to do at this point, especially with what's going on, is to, I probably talked about this before, getting an accounting of what you have. If you go to any attorney for asset protection, they're going to want to know that. What do you own? Who are the title owners of that property? And things like that. Just as a quick aside, one of the things I noticed, I have clients who have property, or so they think, in the name of an LLC. So a person owns a rental property, they create an LLC, they think that the property was transferred into the LLC, and the attorney forgot to do it. So for many years, you file tax returns showing it in an LLC. Next thing you know, there's a problem and a lawsuit comes. Well, they're going to go and they're going to pull titles. They're going to take a look and find out what you own. And if your name's on that title because they failed to put it in the LLC, again, you've got a risk. So you really need to get a good accounting of your assets, figure out what you have, where they're located, and start putting together a plan. And that part of that plan, once you have that, if you want to do some asset protection, you need to talk to a qualified attorney who understands those laws, because they all do not. And one major consideration, though, of course, in all your asset protection planning is Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam's not going to say, oh, because it's in a trust, you're not going to have to pay tax. No, a trust is going to pay taxes too if you're going to leave the assets income accumulating in that trust. So there's a lot of moving parts involved in it. The only way to get yourself going is to get yourself going. One of the last thing that I'm going to throw in there, and of course, only honorable people we have, is assets that are physical in nature, that don't have titles, that you don't want to even identify with, let's say. So, for example, cash, regular dollars in the pocket. So if you have money in the bank, it's documented. There it is. We can find it. If you have a $100 bill sitting in a box, well, that doesn't exist in the documented world. Maybe you have collectibles like baseball cards, and they have separate value. Maybe you have gold or silver or special artwork that's worth money. Again, you would, of course, never lie on any documentation you have to fill in for lawsuit purposes, listing out your assets. But I'm just saying that these things might end up being forgotten because you may actually forget about them. The summary of this is that, you know, we move along in life, we think everything's good, and just like that, in 1 second, the walls come falling down around us, and that's when you find out where all your weaknesses are. So in order to avoid that is to do some planning, and you're not going to be 100%, but to do some kind of form of asset protection, be it from liabilities, from creditors, and also to protect the assets so be able to be transferred eventually to the beneficiaries and the people that you care about and love the most. So that's about it. If you have any questions, and if you're my clients, of course, you're welcome to call me. You all should know my number. If you're not, you can find me. I'm in Staten Island, New York, so all you got to do is look up my name, David Fusco, CPA, and you'll be able to find us. You can also take a look on the internet, search us out, and you can find us here. We also have a location in Wayne County, Pennsylvania. So thank you very much. Have a great day.